Good morning to you. I'm Danilo Evangelista, and welcome to our tropical weather outlook video for today, Monday, June 2nd, 2025. Let's start off with the National Hurricane Center homepage, in which there is nothing happening right now over the next 7 days in the Atlantic. All is nice and quiet as we are now day 2 into hurricane season. In the Eastern Pacific, on the other hand, there is an area of interest. We are watching this very closely. The Eastern Pacific is going to stay active, it seems, for the next several weeks. We obviously just had Alvin last week, and it looks like we may not be far behind with our next named storm. An area that is south of Mexico could develop, has a 40% chance of development over the next 7 days, at least according to the National Hurricane Center. But beyond that, nothing else going on in the tropics. Here's a satellite view of the Atlantic today, and you can see very nice and quiet once again. There's lots of strong upper level winds, which I'll show you the wind shear map in just a moment. Also lots of Saharan air out there. There's a few clouds over the northern Caribbean and the Bahamas today. This front that has come off the east coast, you can see it is now over the Bahamas and the northern Caribbean. Then obviously down here we have the ITCZ. I believe there is a tropical wave that is somewhere in here that came off the coast of Africa not long ago. Other than that, though, on the satellite imagery, you can see nice and quiet, as the National Hurricane Center says, in the Atlantic. In the Eastern Pacific, here's the satellite imagery. Not much else going on as well. We have a few clouds and thunderstorms here embedded within the ITCZ, the Intertropical Convergence Zone in the Pacific. And there's also some cloud cover and thunderstorm activity near Central America. And this is where we're going to have to watch over the next several days to see if we can get, once again, these thunderstorms to cluster, consolidate, and develop and become another tropical system. We'll see over the next several days if that does happen. Of course, the next name on the list in the Eastern Pacific is Barbara. So we'll see if that does end up happening. Here's a look at the sea surface temperature anomaly map. This is still May 31st. I guess the June 1st map didn't come out yet, because this map always updates a day behind. But I think the general theme should be the same. Very warm in the Atlantic as we are now starting off hurricane season. Very warm in the Atlantic. Especially very warm throughout the Caribbean and Gulf of Mexico with our sea surface temperature anomalies. Lots of these anomalies in the Gulf and Caribbean, as much as 1, maybe even 2 degrees Celsius above normal. So that is already one positive thing that you need for tropical development. And as I mentioned a lot over the last several days, we're going to have to watch this region in the Atlantic over the next several weeks now as we head into the month of June, and things might start to become more favorable. Meanwhile, in the Eastern Pacific, still no La Nina out there or El Nino, and now that we're in hurricane season and there's pretty much no sign of an El Nino, I'm pretty sure we could say it is safe to say that we will not have an El Nino for this hurricane season. And once again, on top of that, with a very, very cold northern Pacific out here. I went over this in my forecast last night, when I did my June 1st live stream. If you did not see that, it's up on my YouTube page. So if you want to review it, I went over my forecasts for what I personally think this hurricane season will be, numbers-wise and impacts-wise, in both the Atlantic and the Pacific. And I noted that these cooler waters here in the Pacific might help keep a tap on the Pacific hurricane season this year. And I mean, you could just eyeball these two basins. The Atlantic definitely looks warmer overall than the Pacific, so we'll have to see generally what kind of pattern that ends up leading to, but I would assume it'll probably be active. And as I went over my forecast yesterday, I'll post my forecast for those of you who haven't seen the live stream last night. I'll post it on the YouTube community and also on my Twitter this morning once I'm finished recording this. But I generally think it looks like we're going to be in for an active hurricane season in the Atlantic this year. And taking a look at the actual sea surface temperatures across the Atlantic right now, obviously still not yet fully warmed up in the Eastern Atlantic, and as I said before, we don't typically watch the Eastern Atlantic for development early on in the month of June. It's not till late July and August when we start to watch the Eastern Atlantic for development. And it's clear as to why we don't watch the Eastern Atlantic for development right now. Just look at the sea surface temperatures, still for the most part cold and below the 26 degrees Celsius line that we watch for typically. But where is it warm enough for development in the Atlantic right now? That is the Western Atlantic, especially through the Caribbean. Most readings here at least 28, even some 29s and even some 30s here in the Northwestern Caribbean, and the Gulf as a whole is also mostly in the 28, 29 degrees Celsius range, and that is the upper 80s to low 90s in Fahrenheit. And that's why we watch the Western Atlantic for development this time of year in the hurricane season. And as I mentioned before, we're going to have to watch this region over the next several weeks for potential development. But obviously, nothing happening right now. So we have the warm sea surface temperatures, but obviously we don't have development, and this is pretty much one of the reasons why. This is the wind shear map from the University of Wisconsin. I really love using the University of Wisconsin website for lots of maps, and this is one of them. And you see, look at all of these reds all throughout the deep tropics, even the Caribbean and Gulf, where it is very, very warm right now. The wind shear is very high, so that is definitely not a favorable factor for tropical development. And as long as this wind shear remains high, we obviously won't have development in the foreseeable future. But I'm pretty sure over the next several weeks, we'll probably start to see a lot of these reds go away. And as conditions generally become more favorable as we head into hurricane season, we'll probably start to see a lot more of these greens begin to fill in. But for now, lots of wind shear, keeping things nice and quiet. And then obviously on the other hand, you can see on the Eastern Pacific side, should have brought up the Eastern Pacific map, but you can see that there are a lot more greens in the Eastern Pacific, hence why we are looking at potential development chances there as of right now. And another limiting factor, obviously, is the Saharan air, and you hear a lot about this, especially early on in the hurricane season, and you're probably going to hear a lot about it this year. And a lot of people do tend to bring up Saharan air as an inhibiting factor, especially when you see in huge amounts of it, and it is an inhibiting factor. But I do want to stress the fact that Saharan air is typical of this time of year as well. It is not unusual that we have a lot of Saharan air out there, especially early on in the season, because the trade winds tend to be much stronger, which allow much more of these dust outbreaks to occur. And of course, because of that, that keeps a lid on the tropics. But once again, as we get towards July and August, you will see, and I will bring this map up a lot, especially once we get into later in the season, you will start to see a lot of this dry air begin to lift northward. And once we get to August, things will start to become active out here in the Eastern Atlantic. For now, emphasis really on the Western Atlantic, including the Caribbean and Gulf, and off the southeast coast, which, as I mentioned last night, there was a little bit of talk over the past several days about maybe something trying to get going off the southeast coast. We'll see. And let's actually see right now on the models, if the global models, the GFS, I'm only going to show the GFS today because there's really not much to talk about. But let's see if they do show any sort of development, at least on this morning's run, and at least taking a look at the 6E, maybe at around hour 90. So this is on Friday. Some sort of vorticity signature here near the Carolinas coast, but compared to at least some of the other models I've seen, the GFS not enthusiastic about anything major trying to get going or anything noticeable, because if anything does happen, it probably wouldn't be major or huge anyways. It probably would just be a quick spin up, but at least the GFS not really indicating much at all in the way of development. And then taking a look at the GFS over the next week, things nice and quiet in the Atlantic, and then obviously on the other hand in the Eastern Pacific, over the next week, looks like things might be trying to get going there as well. So we might have more activity in the Eastern Pacific, and meanwhile, for now in the Atlantic, things looking nice and quiet, which is good, especially now that we're just at the start of hurricane season. Good that we are not starting right off the bat with something. That wouldn't be fun if that was the case. But bottom line, things are looking nice and quiet in the Atlantic. And for now, if any tropical development chances occur, it looks like we're really going to have to watch in the Eastern Pacific. And even with that, may not be anything too significant anyways. But we'll see. We'll see how things end up panning out over the next week or so. With that being said, that's going to do it for today's Tropical Weather Outlook. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Sorry, I get tied up on words a little. Happens to everybody. If you enjoyed what you saw today, though, I really, 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 and I always stress this out every single video, but really, it means a lot to me. If you like, comment your thoughts, comment what you think, comment any questions you have. I'm very good with answering comments, so I will do it if you have any questions, and especially subscribe if you find my videos interesting and you want to see more content from me, which I will be doing now every single day, all the way up until the season ends. Now that we're in hurricane season, I'm going to be doing these videos pretty much every single day. So subscribe if you are interested in that. Once again, enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe. Peace, love, and kindness to you all, and we will talk again tomorrow.